And yes, we're live. I'm here with my new friend, Chris. How you doing, Chris?
Hey, I'm doing great, David. How are you doing?
You mind if I call you Chris, or is it Christopher you
No,
prefer?
Chris is fine. Yeah, Chris is good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm doing okay. Like I told you before going live, I've been telling everyone who will listen I'm sick. I'm sick, but I'm getting better. On antibiotics. So, but if my brain isn't as sharp as usual, forgive me. Forgive me. So before we start talking about what you're up to today, and I think you have a lot going on, maybe just walk us through the faith journey from a really early age, like first impressions about God, religion, home
Okay.
life, what was it like, and walk us all the way up through puberty and then all the way up till today. What kind of twists and turns, if any, you encountered on the road, okay?
Sure. Yeah. So, growing up, grew up in a Christian household. Parents, both believed. We went to church every Sunday. Was in Sunday school, and so was introduced to it at a young age, and kind of just learned about it and understood for the most part as a kid can understand, and um, just continued down that path until middle school. Was going to church camps and things like that. And that's where I ended up getting baptized. So again, my early age, my early childhood, not a whole lot of bumps in the road as far as faith goes. Like believed it. That's what my parents believed. I was learning about it. I understood, and that's what I wanted to follow. And so I made the choice. I actually remember I was at church camp and really just felt kind of that tug to get baptized there. It was my last year at camp, and it was a big decision for me. I actually called my parents to tell them I was going to get baptized so they could come and be a part of it and everything like that. And I was getting teary eyed. I was getting choked up because it was a big decision for me. There's a lot of emotions in it, making a decision like that for myself. And they came. I still remember it. It was in the pool at Rainbow Christian Camp here in Indiana. Got in the pool, got baptized by one of our good mentors there, and Jeff Lawson. And when it was like it started to rain, like we got in the water, it started to sprinkle, and I got dunked. They did all that, and I came up, and it was a weird. And it's probably, I don't know, in my head or whatnot, but this like warmth and like light felt like it was just kind of on me. I was just a really cool thing. I won't ever forget that. And parents were there watching. And, after that, that's where, you think things would get easy, right? When you
Yeah.
accept and everything, but that's, where things started to really kind of change as far as not my faith. I still believed, had everything, but really just was getting attacked in different ways. Whether that be how I saw myself with my self-worth, and then with that, how I responded in relationships, to find that validation and that, comfort in external means. And, just kept going down that path, of not feeling worthy, of not feeling, loved, not feeling needed, and then trying to fill that void with relationships and external, um, instant gratification type things. And you got to a really dark point in college. So I went through all high school, had a good face on, like felt good, happy guy. But internally was just like devastated. Just, why am I here? There's no reason for it. To be better. And so I got into college and kind of hit my low blow of mental aspect, at least, contemplated killing myself,
Mm.
the world would be better off. World wouldn't even know if I wasn't here. Right. And, thought about driving my car into a tree, on many drives home from college. But I was like, well, if I don't do it right, then I'm going to be a bigger burden, and I don't want that. So that kind of stayed my hand, and kept me from actually doing anything, thankfully. So yeah, just really battled with that. Battled with, not feeling like I was enough, not feeling worthy. But college also was the best time because during that dark moment, I went to school for athletic training. I don't do that now, but I went to school for athletic training and got involved with the program there. And it was a private Christian school, and we are going to go on these mission trips. So I think it was my sophomore year. Went to this children's home down in Georgia, Macon, Georgia, here in the United States. And we're just going to do labor stuff for them, you know, paint, clean stuff up, help them just have a better location there, and also get to hang out with the kids and play games and share kind of faith with them, because these kids have been torn from their home for, you know, whatever reason, parents in drugs, jail, whatever it is. And it was during those trips that we would meet as a team and discuss and go over everything. And I was one, and I still, you know, hold a lot of things close to the chest. I don't get emotional very easy. I don't share emotions very easy. But in these groups, and, you know, just felt God really calling me, hey, you can't heal and grow unless you're vulnerable, unless you like tell people what's going on. And it was within these groups that I shared those deepest, darkest things that were haunting me. And I cried in front of people, and I broke down. And but that was the breakthrough that God got in my heart of, it's going to be okay. And so thankfully that happened, and had great mentors there. School provided great resources. They had psychiatrists and psychologists on site, where I could go and get help and talk through things and do that, which is another funny story. I actually walked up. So I had to walk through the student center, walk up these stairs to go into the office to schedule a time to speak with a psychiatrist, with a psychologist. And I got up to the door. I was like, nah, this is going to be really hard. I'm going to have to talk about even more about emotions and pains and everything. And, you know, it's going to be a little hard. I'm not going to do this. So I turned around, walked back down the stairs, got into the middle of the student section. And also I just stopped. And I swear people were probably like, what is this guy doing? They probably weren't really. I was probably there for like a second, but I stopped. I was like, that would be a hard thing to do. I should probably do that. So I turned back around. It was just this weird voice in my head. I turned back around, walked up the stairs, signed up, and, you know, got scheduled to talk through some stuff. And from that moment on, it, you know, it was a healing journey. And I can't say that it's perfect. I don't have, you know, suicidal thoughts or anything anymore, but still sometimes that negativity of like, dude, like the imposter syndrome, you know, those negative thoughts about yourself, like, man, be better, whatever it is, still come back. And you still have to kind of fight that with, you know, prayer and understanding your worth is outside of any labels people give you. Yeah. And now I just try to share and help other people understand their story matters, that they matter. And yeah, that's kind of mine in a nutshell.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Now I regret asking you to tell us about bumps in the road. That was a poor choice of words. I didn't know the story. So, you know, because you mentioned the highway drive home or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering just about your siblings. How many siblings do you have?
Sure. Yeah, I have three siblings: older brother, older sister, and a younger sister.
Did they go through something similar in terms of the Christian path, not in terms of the dark side, but in terms of the light side? Did they end up being Christian, having a baptism of their own initiative and these sorts of things?
Yeah, all of them are believers and kind of have a good path. And yeah, so, you know, thinking on that, yeah, everyone else, all my other siblings had a good relationship as well.
Did they know about some of the dark times you went through?
Yeah, I think a lot of it stems from them hearing on my podcast.
Oh, okay, so they heard years later.
Yeah, oh yeah. I don't think anyone knew, even during college. I don't think I told anybody family-wise. I think it was probably 2019, 2020 when I actually shared on my podcast.
Wow.
And then posted like those videos for them to see. I think probably the only time they heard. And unless they listened to those episodes, they might not have known. But I think I'm pretty sure they all have known or heard. Yeah.
I always love hearing how people meet their mate. How'd you meet your wife? What's the story there? And just focus on the romantic spark where one or both of you realized, like, I want this person. This is my person, as they say. What was that? What was that moment?
Yeah. So it's actually down. My wife's from Texas, so I moved down there after college. I got a graduate assistant position. Was in the church. Met her there at the college program. You know, she was just athletic girl. She played volleyball, D1 volleyball, and I was like, okay, she seems pretty cool, down to earth type thing. And it was funny because so I always joke with her that I was pretty smooth, which it probably wasn't, but I was like, I want to hang out with this girl. to get her to know her better. And so on the church groups, the college groups page, I said, hey, did anyone want to go to the park on this day to play soccer, kick soccer ball around, just hang out, because I knew she liked soccer as well. And so I said, hey, here's my number. Text me if you need directions or if you need more information or whatever. Thinking in my head, I was like, okay, she's going to text me to figure out where, even though she's from this area, like she probably already knew everything about it. But ends up, she texted me. I show up. I'm the only one there. I'm the only one there. No one else had come. I brought a hammock just in case, because I was like, if no one's there, like at least I can read and sit here, like, and not look like just some bum with the ball. And so I'm in this hammock, and she texts me. She's like, hey, this is Hannah. Just seeing if we're still doing stuff, if you're out there. I was like, yeah, come on. I think some more people are coming. And so she shows up, and me not being the not thinking everything through, she gets there, walks up to the hammock, goes, hey, no one else is here yet, like, it's cool if you want to chill and just sit here, you just hang out. And she's like, okay. And she's kind of reserved and more analytical minded. So I still don't know why she sat, because when she sits in this hammock, I like slide over to one side and let her sit, not thinking like when she sits, and exactly what happened. We both slid right in the middle, like right next to each other. And I'm like, I can feel myself getting warm. I'm like, oh my gosh, this just ruined it. So I'm like, put my arm around her, kind of like behind her, like to try to push myself away. And it didn't work. Eventually we just gave in and just kind of sat there, and we talked for a couple hours just about each other's lives and things like that. And then ended up going to see Spider-Man that evening. But so that was our first impression. And then fast forward, we started dating, and probably a year into it, maybe less than that, I remember putting in my phone, I'm going to marry this girl. And, that was 2013, 2014. We ended up getting married in 2016. Did a long distance relationship there for a little bit while she was doing volleyball at Arkansas State. But yeah, just shortly after, I kind of knew. And like I said, I put it in my phone, and that was it.
Wow. What does she think now about that hammock scene? Does she laugh about it?
Oh yeah. Yeah. We definitely, like, if it's brought up again, or if like we tell our story, like something we've in life groups here at church, we've shared, and it's always a laugh. It's always funny.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I always ask my guests to invite their spouse onto the podcast, because I like to hear the other side of the story. So you'll extend the invitation. I'm not expecting her to say yes. Some people do. Later this afternoon at 3 o'clock, I've got an interview with the spouse of one of my guests. He actually said yes, because it was a female guest that I had on. So that's going to be exciting. But there's a connection. The reason I'm asking about romance is because it's an analog of what a relationship with Christ is. It's a romantic thing. It is. It's love, it's intimacy, and it's fruitfulness. So when you told me the hammock story, I thought that was going to be where you conceived your first child, but I guess not. I was overly optimistic.
That's funny.
But when I met my wife, it was just totally a big surprise, like, because she wasn't what I thought. In your case, you wanted this woman. In my case, I was just like, who's this bizarre woman? And I didn't realize that she was the one at first. It was like, I was attracted, but I was in denial about it. But we got married within 3 months. So
wow.
It's a different story. I'm not going to tell you the story, but maybe if you come back, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
But my listeners have heard it too many times. But the nuptial theology, it's something I'm very excited about. Christ is the bridegroom of the church. The church is the bride of the Christ. So that's always front and center in my mind. It's not a cold clinical relationship that we have with our Creator. We're supposed to enter into that intimacy. So is this something that's emphasized in your Christian community? Because in the Catholic Church, there's a certain stream where that's emphasized. Certain saints emphasize that. Not everyone's going around thinking about it all day as I do, but is it emphasized at all in your community?
Yeah, it's definitely brought up in sermons and things like that. It's definitely mentioned. Like, it's not a new thing. I've heard it quite often. So yeah, but to the extent of how it's talked about, I think it's mentioned, and then I think a a lot of the times dive into what that can look like, sort of, through like the emotional ties and like what relationships kind of look like and how that kind of mirrors our relationship with Christ.
I want to give a shout out to my friends in the live chat here. I've got Haley,
Oh,
I've
cool.
got Kieran and Christopher. Haley's Catholic, Kieran's Greek Orthodox,
Oh,
and
cool.
Christopher's Protestant of some sort. I'm not even sure if he's aware of what kind of Protestant he is. He was raised in the holiness movement. Have you heard about that?
No, I
The
don't think so.
holiness movement? I don't know that
Holiness.
much about it. I don't know that much about it, but sounds pretty cool. The holiness
Yeah.
movement.
Yeah.
So a diverse small group of
That's awesome.
devoted listeners. I've met a lot of cool people on the podcast, you know.
Yeah.
But maybe tell me a little bit about, before we get too deep into the Bible and Christianity, tell me a
Hmm.
little bit about your podcast. And I put a link to your website, but the website seems to be about tech stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So my
Video.
business, yeah, Elevate Media Group. We do video production,
Okay.
from business promos to weddings, events, things like that. But yeah, my podcast is the Elevate Media Podcast, and basically what we talk about, we help those who are trying to start a business elevate their lives and elevate their brands. So we do throw in a lot of like personal development type things. We've had spiritual conversations on there, just to help people understand, again, their story matters. Their worth is more than labels that the world puts on them. But also, throw in the, how to build a business, how to grow a business through my guests and my solo episodes.
Okay, so you regularly have guests?
Yep. So every Monday will be a guest interview episode, and then Wednesday and Friday is when I put out my solo episodes.
Okay. And what are the criteria for a guest? How would you select, like, yes, you'd be a good guest, or no, you wouldn't, thank you anyway?
Yeah. So
How
you
do you
have to
do
pay
that?
me. You have to pay me $10,000. No, just kidding. No, no. Um, the criteria is just someone. I mean, if you have a unique story that can benefit someone and help them in their lives by sharing it to elevate their lives. If you have an expertise in business that if someone's listening, trying to grow, they can take something and elevate their business from. Those are really the only two criteria
Okay.
that we really have. Yeah.
Okay, and do you use Podmatch to find guests?
We use Podmatch. We use another one called Guestio. We also use Matchmaker a little bit, matchmaker.fm, and it's actually a podcast site. It's not
Okay.
a relationship site. Like I thought when I first got sent, I was like, what are you sending me to? And then honestly, thankfully, come from, PR firms, marketing firms that reach out to us now
Oh,
to
really?
have their clients be on the show.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
super grateful. That
Wow.
we've made it, quote unquote. No, not really, but it is nice to have that option from people. So
Yeah. Just a little side note here. My friend Christopher says he was raised Nazarene/Wesleyan,
oh,
and now he has Anabaptist leanings. He's curious about the
okay.
Anabaptists. Is that the
I
same
don't
as the
know much.
Baptist? Is that the
Um,
Baptist?
I don't know. That's a good question. I was gonna say I went to Indiana Wesleyan, so I have a little bit of understanding of the Wesleyan somewhat.
Are they
So I know a big
Reformed?
thing.
They're Reformed?
Um, I'm not sure if you'd say they're reformed. I
No?
know when I was there, they decided they're going to allow dancing. So that was
Okay.
a big thing. That was a big thing when we
Wow.
were there.
Did they allow hammocks?
Yes, they did. I don't know if they're aware of the consequences of hammocks.
Christopher says no, they're not reformed. So
Okay.
yeah, I don't know that much about
I don't. Yeah.
Wesley.
Wesleyan. Yeah, I don't know much about it. Like I said, I just kind of went to that school. Great school, beautiful school, but yeah, I knew they didn't like dancing, and when they overturned that for our a New Year's quote unquote party, you could dance and like just like raise the roof, and they were okay with it finally.
Okay, he's saying they came from the Methodists. Oh, now I'm
Oh,
starting to remember now. Yeah,
okay, okay,
Wesley and the Methodists. Okay, yeah, I'm starting to remember now. And yeah, that's pretty cool. So yeah, back to you and what you're up to. Um, I'm just wondering what your prayer life is like. It's something I always
Hmm,
ask my Christian guest, you know.
yeah,
It's something that in some ways I struggle with the prayer life. In other ways, it's just an ongoing thing. I'm like obsessed with it, and it's just like natural. And
uh-huh.
so, um, I'm not happy with my prayer life, but it's something that I'm doing all the time.
Sure,
It's probably going to look different from your prayer life because I'm Catholic, so I've got a lot of set prayers.
okay,
Um, but I like to get inspiration from my Protestant guests. Um, just paint a little picture. Like
Yeah.
it right now. It's are you in the Eastern Standard Time zone like
Eastern,
I
yeah.
am?
So it's about 9:30
Nine
almost. Yeah.
thirty. So have you done any prayers today, and what prayers were they, if you don't mind my asking?
Yeah. So, today has just been uh thank you. Like just what so we have chickens and turkeys. And so I get to go outside in the cold and take care of them. No, I enjoy it. But it's just walking out there. And a lot of times my prayers are just almost kind of conversations, right or wrong, whatever. Then like, God, thank you for this. Like, thank you that I'm able to do this. Like, thank you for another day. Um, just guide me today. Whatever I have these conversations I'm about to have on podcasts, like just speak through me in some way for someone can hear it, things like that. And that's what I did this morning while I was out there getting them water and getting their food out. I was just like talking through the day almost and just asking him to be with me, and just guiding me in that and just thanking him. Now sometimes it looks different. Sometimes in the mornings, I'll do the Lord's Prayer and I'll start with that. But a lot of times it's just a conversation throughout the day. I'll be driving somewhere and, someone will fly past me, cut me off or something. And then I try to, instead of getting angry, I'll be like, hey, Lord, just be with that person. I don't know what's going on. Stuff like that. So just trying to, I don't know, conversations as things come up. I always pray for my kids. And especially when I drop them off, my mom, she watches them on days that I, do full work from the house just to get more done. I'll pray for them after I drop them off or after she picks them up. Say, Lord, watch her protect them today, help them have fun, help them keep growing, stay away from harm and illness, things like that. It's kind of a one I do on a regular basis. But yeah, a lot of it's just conversations. I just try to, Lord, I messed up. I shouldn't have done that. And just help me to forgive me for that and help me to, stay away from that next time or do better next time. And thank you for not just throwing a lightning bolt down and getting me just
Yeah.
random conversation. So I don't know. And like I said, it's right or wrong, but I just try to, that's just how I do it.
That's nice.
Yeah.
I was trying to listen to sort of different categories of prayer that you do. Definitely Thanksgiving, definitely like a petition asking for
Mm-hmm.
help. And there was definitely a few elements there. You didn't say it explicitly. I'm sure it's true. I'm not accusing you of not I'm not doing this, but I want to emphasize another kind of prayer which you didn't
Sure.
mention, which I'm sure you do implicitly,
Mm-hmm.
which is just telling God that you love him. How do you do that? Do you tell him explicitly, God, I love you?
That's a good question. Yeah. I don't know if I,
Well, you can start today. You can start
yeah,
today.
I guess, yeah, I don't know if those words specifically come out of my mouth, which is funny, not funny, but it's ironic because those words don't come out of my mouth very, very easily anyways.
Even with your wife?
Yeah. So like,
Really?
even with my family. So like, this is all right. So we're getting psychological here. So like my parents and stuff, they tell you I love you every now and then, but I didn't hear very often. It was just kind of an implied thing from their perspective, I
Yeah.
think, which also probably tied into some of my issues. Not that it's wrong what they did, but so we never really heard it from them very often. And so my wife, though, she'll talk on the phone with her parents every time, I love you at the end. I talk to my parents, okay, I'll see you later. Bye. And so for her, it's the weirdest thing. She's like, you don't say I love you? I was like, we just don't do it. And so like she'll always like before she leaves or like at night, she'll be like, I love you. Like, come give me a kiss and stuff. And I was like, ugh, it like fights against what I want to do. Like, so it's so different for me. And I'm like, I love you. Like, I don't have to say it every time. So like, it's interesting you bring that up because it
Yeah.
is something that I don't necessarily. So like in the back of my head, like seeing how I grew up and kind of how it maybe affected me, maybe not. So now with my kids, I'm like always like they're the ones I always am telling because I'm like inherently
Right.
like thinking about that. I'm like, okay, I want them to know without a doubt. So that's funny you bring that up.
Yeah. Well, it's something, not that I'm here to coach you or something, but
No, yeah.
it's something you could definitely grow to enjoy. And with my wife, we tell each other we love each other maybe too much, and it becomes silly, it's kind of silly.
Mhm.
And we do it with silly voices and stuff like that and whatever. So it's just cute. But
Yeah.
with God, like it's my favorite prayer. It really is my favorite prayer. just to tell him that I love him. And you know, I'm aware that the quality of my love is low. It's not like I'm saying, "Hey God, I love you perfectly and I love you as I
Right.
should and aren't I cool? Like look at
Hmm.
me." It's not like that. You know, it's not like that. It's just like by the, you know, God, by your grace, I love you a little bit. You know what I mean? It's more like
Right.
that. It's
Yeah.
more like that. Help me to
Yeah.
love you more. Help me to love you more, you know.
I do have a lot of prayers that are Lord, thank you so much for loving me, like,
Yeah.
and not
Yeah.
giving up on me, like the other
Yeah.
way. And I
Yeah.
do that a lot when I work out. I don't know if it just makes working out makes me more tied to emotion or something, but yeah, a lot of times those conversations happen when I'm working out because I'm thinking of like whatever, and so that's where it goes. So,
Cool, cool. Yeah, it's interesting. So, um, my friend Christopher's asking what your favorite Christian musicians are, your Christian music.
hmm,
He got me into Rich Mullins. I'm reading his autobiography slowly now. Rich Mullins, he had some pretty cool music. He was a very interesting guy. Um, and you know, a lot of the time Christian music, like contemporary
hmm,
Protestant Christian music, it just rubs me the wrong way. I hate it.
I gotcha.
But sometimes it's good, and you know, I always give it a 10 out of 10 anyway because of the lyrics, you know what I mean? It's just like 10
Right.
out of 10. I hate it. I hate it. 10 out of 10. But how do you feel about Christian music?
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's what we got to be careful what we listen to, obviously, and so like putting that on is a good thing.
Well, you'll send
Uh,
me some links of your favorites.
yeah, I can do that. I have to think on it. I'm big into the hymns.
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
that's the best. That's the best. Yeah.
Elvis singing
Oh, yeah?
some hymns.
Oh, no
Yeah.
way.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Okay.
my favorite one is "In the Garden." Um, that one is probably my favorite hymn.
Cool.
Um, but yeah, contemporary, I'd have to think. I Can Only Imagine. I really like that song a lot. I Can Only Imagine.
Okay.
And I'm terrible with artists too.
Yeah.
Like I see it, but I can't remember.
My friend in Australia, Matthew, he likes the House Fires.
I don't think I know them.
You can check them out. They do a thing where it's like a big hall or whatever where they do their music. They're standing in the
Uh-huh.
middle with a bunch of musicians, and then all the groupies or whatever are
Uh-huh.
around, like all the Christians are there with their hands in the air and singing
Huh.
along. And
Yeah.
I find it a bit cringy. Because that's not what Catholic Church looks like, right? It's
Right.
not
Right.
at all.
Yeah.
You know, there's some Catholic churches where they'll break out the guitar, and I try to avoid those
Oh.
places. I try to avoid those places, you know. But the organ is dignified for me, you know, the organ or
Yeah.
Gregorian chant. I don't know
And
if you've
that's what
listened to
I
Gregorian
I
chant.
haven't listened to the Gregorian chants, but I grew up like hymns and the organ, and that was it. Like that was what I
Nice.
grew up on until probably middle school when I started to go into other churches. And I've loved the
You
hymns. And
you probably grew up with an organ that was like you know, the size of my little
yes, it
keyboard
was
here.
not like a big Catholic
A room
organ.
like bigger
Yeah,
than your house, organ
correct.
bigger than your
Yeah,
house, you know.
correct. And I think I think that's cool. Yeah, I
You've
think
been
those are
to a
neat.
Catholic church, you've heard the big organ?
I've heard them. I haven't actually like sat in a Catholic service yet,
Okay.
but I've heard some of those play.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, you're just getting converted today, so I mean, you gotta settle into it. Just kidding,
right.
kidding,
Yeah,
kidding, kidding, kidding. I've never converted anyone to Catholicism, not that I know of. And that's
right.
not my goal. It's not my goal.
Yeah.
But yeah, did you ever encounter any anti-Catholicism?
Ooh.
You must have heard some rumors, you know, the Black Legends and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard people talk about Catholicism and different things, but I mean, I've had people talk completely about against Christian completely,
Yeah,
against Jesus
yeah.
completely, and so I'm just like, I don't believe that. I believe this, and that's what it is, and I can't like. So I just
So
try
you
to love
take it with a
people,
grain
and
of salt. You take it with a grain of salt, all the
yeah, because I'm not
trash
like,
talk, the trash talk.
yeah, I try not to get into that a whole lot. Like I try to show them what I believe and tell them what I believe, but I just try to do it with love, I guess, because I'm not a theologian. I'm not scholared enough to paddle those conversations justly, I think. So I just try to love them. Like I've had people like do things to me like directly, and I'm like, dude, I don't agree with that. I don't want you to be talking like that at all. But I love you as a person. I was like, and I'm here for you if you need anything. But I don't agree with that at all. But we can solve that conversation. Like I had someone on my podcast who was, I think he was atheist or agnostic. He didn't believe any. I can't remember which it was, but we had like some of that conversation. I was like, dude, is that your thought? I hate that for you, just because I love you as a person, and I want to see the best for you, and the best is this, in my opinion. But I'm not going to change you like right now. Like Jesus can change you, God can change your mind. I'm just here to let you know, like, we can have a conversation that we're different, and make our own decisions after that kind of thing. So
my pet peeve is the Mormon religion. It just aggravates me, and I can't help but show it. When I have an LDS guest, and they're all different. They're all lovely people. They're beautiful people, beautiful people, and that's part of the thing that aggravates me, is that it's like such a stupid religion, but they're such beautiful people, and they love God, but they don't understand even what God is. So what's your take on that? And I admit, it's just like a short comment on my part, it's pride. But what's your take on the LDS religion?
Could you go into more of the LDS religion for me?
You don't know it at all?
Not super familiar.
Oh, okay. They believe that that there are many gods,
Okay.
infinite gods.
Okay.
But the top dog, the main god, is called Heavenly Father, and he's a human being that evolved to a high state, but he's still a material being. And Jesus Christ is his physical offspring, and is a separate God. And then the Holy Spirit is a third God, and then we become gods if we play our cards right and we get our own planet to rule over. And they're infinite worlds, infinite gods, and basically it's a whole bunch of nonsense.
Interesting. That is, yeah. I thought you were talking about the Marvel multiverse right there.
Basically,
I would have to say for that, like, I mean, I don't believe that. I think it is definitely an interesting perspective, but yeah, I think God is God, and
he's pure spirit. He's not he's not composed of parts.
Right.
He's not subject to change. Like, this is basic stuff. This is basic stuff.
Well, interesting to hear your thought on it. I just heard this the other day, that God came down. His spirit is all of us, because he wanted to experience life in all of us.
Yeah.
So like they're like, yeah, God, he was Hitler because he wanted to experience life as Hitler, and he's me because he wants to experience life as me. And I'm like, I don't know. But like, I don't think that's. I mean, he's in us, and that's if we accept him. But like, for him to want to experience, I don't know. It was just interesting.
He doesn't need anything. He doesn't need anything, and he doesn't need a physical manifestation of your example and my example to live to have a full and comprehensive knowledge of what you are and what I am.
Yeah. Right. Because he knows it already.
It's out of a generous love that he created creation. He didn't need to. It's not like it's benefiting him.
Right.
Like, I mean, your life is good by the grace of God. It's because of God that your life is good. And when you fall short, that's on you. Like, all of the credit goes to God and all the blame goes to you. That's the way it is. And you're not teaching God anything. He's not giving some wonderful new experience because of you, period. And I had a recent guest who is sort of new age or whatever, and he's sort of, he wants to be Christian, but he's got these new age ideas, and he described the exact same thing, that we're sparks of God and God's learning through us and all these sorts of things, and we all come from the same source, and we are all one. And it's a very common idea, right? And he teaches yoga, so he's involved in the Eastern philosophies, and that's what they teach in Hinduism, Buddhism, and all the rest, is that separation is illusion, but we have this experience, but we're experiencing it as God, and you and I are not two beings, but we are ultimately one, and that's what we're going to go back to, that ocean. And my guest described it as, yes, there's one river and we're droplets in the river or whatever. It's just like, this is Eastern mysticism. It's monism.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing that they were saying when they were talking to us, two things. They said also, like, God is in all the emotions, and that's how he speaks to us, which I thought was actually kind of interesting, to think of something like that, sort of. He speaks to us through our emotions. Like, if we get angry, like, hey, why are you angry? Like, what is in here that's causing you to be angry? Kind of like
Mhm.
I don't know, like a check engine light type of thing. Like he speaks to us through our emotion, which I thought was interesting. But they also said, and what kind of got me like, as well, is they're like, yeah, so like God is in all of us and we are God. I'm like, when we start saying we are God, that's I feel like that puts us in in a sticky situation.
Yeah. I want to react to the emotional part
Yeah.
because we're made in the image and likeness of God, which means we have reason and
Mm-hmm.
free will. Okay?
Yep.
And Satan, the evil one,
Huh?
the adversary, he manipulates us through our emotions and
Okay.
through imagery and emotion. That's why the ascetics and
Mm,
the desert fathers, they shunned the fantasies, the imagery, the imagination. They shunned that. Not to say that we Christians have to do that. This is just their extreme approach.
right.
But they
Mm-hmm.
said no imagery, not even of Jesus and whatever.
Hmm.
So they were wary because they knew that Satan is given permission to play with our emotions and to play with our imagination. Okay.
Mm,
Um, what Satan can't do is play with our reason. He can't play with our reason.
okay.
He only uses the secondary indirect route of images and um, emotions. So
Interesting. Okay.
that's why when you were saying that God operates through the emotions, well, it's true that God gave us emotions. Emotions are good,
Uh-huh.
but it's a weak point. It's a weak point. We have to
Yeah.
be very, very careful. We have to
That's
test the spirits.
no, and I'm glad you brought that because that was something like that was the only part I wanted to dig more into because like I didn't know enough of that part, and so that's why I'm glad we got on the show so I can ask that. So that
Yeah.
clears that up for me, and um,
Mm,
yeah, so it almost kind of makes me think like that, like a little bit stoicism. Like we need to be a little bit more stoic because that's
yeah.
more of regulating your emotions and not letting it dictate your actions. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. We, in the Catholic Church, we always think about the reason sitting above
mm,
and sort of taking stock. Okay, this is how I'm feeling, and this is
yeah,
what images in my mind,
mhm,
and just be aware. Take stock, and the reason, um, is striving for truth, and
mhm,
our will is supposed to recognize and strive for the good. So we've got
right,
the true and the good, and that's kind of the project. And if you get off the rails by temptation,
yep,
it's always by means of some sort of half truth and some sort of good, like a lower good,
hmm
like, well, just think about your children, like what their selfish desires that they have,
yeah,
it's for food or for sleep or whatever it is. It's a good thing that they want, but it's not the appropriate time or quantity or
mm,
whatever, right? So
right,
you as a parent are kind of like the voice of reason saying, well, yes, the cake is good, but you've already had three pieces and you're not having a fourth piece. So, like, you know what I mean?
right,
That's the
yeah,
voice of reason, and we have to have that internally ourselves as adults, that voice
yep,
of reason saying, yeah, the cake is good, but enough's enough. So,
yeah, right. No, it's good. A good clarification for sure.
so yeah, my friend in the live chat mentioned Richard Rohr. He's a Catholic heretic, kind of like a guy who's got a wacky ideas
Huh?
and controversial Catholic, and he's sort of, I don't know if he's been excommunicated or what, but
Gotcha.
he's brought in a bunch of New Age ideas
Mm,
and the universal Christ and we are all God and this sort of thing.
yeah.
And a few of my guests have been mentioning it recently. I guess you haven't heard about him, much less read him, right?
No.
Okay. But it's interesting to note, for you as an outsider to the
Yeah.
Catholic Church, that there are all kinds of currents in the church, left, right,
Hmm.
uh, New Age, saints who are good and holy and they're the example that we're supposed to follow. The great saints. I'm sure you've heard about a lot of our
Hmm.
Catholic saints, Saint Francis of Assisi with the animals and all
Hmm.
sorts of things.
Yeah.
And they're sort of caricatures that people have in their minds about these some of these great saints. And if you look into them a little bit more deeply, you see that there's more to the story, and sometimes the emphasis in the popular culture is not actually the emphasis of the real man or woman that
Mm,
walked the earth. You can sometimes be surprised. For example, with Saint Francis of Assisi, that he was very rigid and very, very orthodox and nothing flaky or he
Yeah.
wasn't a hippie smoking drugs. He was like a very serious man in love with God and very strict. Not to say that he wasn't kind and gentle, he was, but together with a real sobriety.
Mm.
So it's interesting the richness that we have in the Catholic Church when it comes to these examples, these men and women who, by the grace of God, exemplified Christ. I'm just wondering if you're jealous of that, or if you're unaware of that, or what's your relationship with the saints?
I mean, obviously, I've heard of some of them. I don't have a deep knowledge of them, but I wouldn't say I'm jealous. I think it just gives us someone else that we can kind of learn from, learn on how they lived and take things from them. And, how can we implement things to live a closer in line
Yeah.
life with Christ? So,
Well, when I say jealous, jealousy is a very it's a technical word in the Catholic Church.
mhm.
It's where you want a good thing that your brother has. Envy is where you don't want
Mm,
your friend to have the good thing, but jealousy is actually a positive thing. It's where it's like, oh, you have this good thing. Oh, you have a healthy family. I want a healthy family too.
gotcha.
And
Yeah.
so like I mean, okay, I want to walk you through this.
Yeah.
You're probably pretty excited about Saint Paul, right? Like, you probably like him
St. Paul, remind me what he's done.
in the Bible.
Oh, uh-huh.
Right? I mean, you just
Yeah.
call him Paul. You just call him
Yeah.
Paul, right?
Paul. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, every Protestant I've talked to, he is, St. Paul's a hero for them, and he's a hero
Right.
for me. So can you imagine? The heroes in the New Testament.
Mm-hmm.
You've probably got all kinds of favorites in there,
Yeah.
including John the Baptist and everyone else.
Right.
You probably have your favorites, and you get excited thinking um, about the gifts that they have. And what do they have that they have not received? So all the glory goes to
Mm.
God.
Yep. Yep.
It's easy. You're not going to
Right.
fall into idolatry. You're not going to fall into something weird, worshiping them as God. No.
Right.
But by the grace of God, they have these gifts. And so, can you imagine the reason that I think you should be jealous of
Mm.
the Catholics is because we have just more of that. We have many, many hundreds of examples of men and women who can inspire you and excite you like that. That's why I
Yeah.
think you should be jealous because we have
I
so
got you.
many
Yeah.
saints. Because what do you think about this sort of, not that it's hero worship, but you do get excited by the example of Paul or John the
Yep.
Baptist or whoever.
Yep.
You understand now what I'm trying to drive at?
Yeah. I think it is. I think like they had like an unshakable faith kind of thing. Like when negative stuff happened to them, they saw like they took it as like this is like God's up to something. You know, he's working through a situation. Maybe I'm in jail, maybe I'm getting persecuted, whatever it is. Like I'm still going to lean into that, and like I'm like, man, yeah, that to have that level of faith, like because I think about things that trials that I go through, I'm like, okay, there's like 10 times more. So like, would I crack? You know what I'm saying? Like, so yeah, I
Yeah.
think jealous of like that faith, and and he's not a disciple or anything, but like David,
Yeah.
um, like even though he wasn't perfect, like still what he was able to do through God, or God was able to do through him, even being, you know, messing up big time
Yeah.
sometimes. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
like, okay, like God can use all those guys and girls, even, Ruth and um uh and like he could use me then too. And like so, but being jealous of, and I guess that jealous is hearing that is a different um way to use it for sure in my mind. Like I always think it was jealousy is bad.
Uh,
But like, yeah, I think it would be, yeah, to have stronger faith, to have, the ability to hear God even more clearly, like some of them did, like when he spoke to them. And yeah, that'd be really neat.
what are some of your favorite Bible stories, Old Testament and New? You mentioned David, some of the trials he went through, and
Hmm.
his weakness or whatever. And if you think about it, like you're a full-grown adult, but you can think about
Hmm.
it in terms of if you were presenting a Sunday school curriculum, you could put it together. You could put it together. You get to choose the
Okay.
Bible stories, the different scenes. You've got a professional artist that's going to make cute pictures, and you're going to present just these stories which ones would you choose because you love these stories and you think they're important for kids to encounter them?
That's a good question. Um,
You don't need to list all of them, but which ones are popping to mind right away? Like you're thinking right away about this scene, you're
the,
thinking about that
the
scene.
first one is just creation, like the story of
Ah,
creation. Look, and I know this is
ah,
the very first one, but I just like to show, like, because we're made in God's image, so like we are made to create in some form or fashion. Obviously, maybe we're not going to create a new species or something like that, but like we're made to create whatever that looks like, and so be able to tie that into the teaching or the story, like showing what God created. He thought it was good. So tying that aspect into it, but also tying into the aspect that like when he made us, it was very good. Like
mm,
the differentiation there. So like we were his almost favorite creation. And to remind people that again, your story matters. Like you mattered. Like you were the favorite thing that was being created. And then showing that he rested. I think a lot of times people struggle with that, especially from my perspective in my audience. It's okay to rest sometimes. God rested. So take that time and rest. I think that'd be a really cool one to be able to share. And then David and Goliath would be cool. Again, just to talk about facing your giants and um, through God's strength. And even though you're not the biggest, fastest, strongest, whatever it is, like you can still have, you know, that strength that comes from Him, and laying that story out. So those two, I think, came to my mind first.
it's pretty cool. I don't know if you're aware of, the Catholic devotions. One of our, most popular devotions, you've probably heard of it, is the Rosary.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering what impression you have of the Rosary. Maybe tell me your impression first, and then I'll just tell you a little bit about the parts that you didn't mention.
Because the rosary is how's that one go?
Well, it's meditations on the life of Jesus and his mother.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's the beads.
Uh-huh.
We've got the
Yeah.
beads, and we pray Our Father and Hail Marys, and
Full
we have
grace.
meditations. Yeah. So it's something that's well known in the popular culture,
Mm-hmm.
but there's not really a depth of understanding from
Yeah,
non-Catholics about what is actually happening.
that's
So
true.
your impression is just like they pray with beads, like that's your.
Yeah, and my impression's always been that it was like you're praying to Mary, which growing up, people were like, yeah, you don't pray to Mary. Like, there's no reason to pray to Mary, kind of thing. So that's all. That was my perspective. That's all I've always known. Now I'm not always like, oh yeah, what they're doing is wrong. Like I'm just like, okay,
Yeah, you
I
don't
just don't.
bash the rosary, you just
No,
don't.
I just, yeah, I haven't dived into that a whole lot. I've just known what people are doing. Oh yeah, they're just praying to Mary, which is a waste of time. I'm like, I don't know. They're doing what they're doing. So
Yeah. Well, the words for the Hail Mary are all scriptural. They come from Scripture. And the angel Gabriel uttered those words, "Hail Mary, full of grace." So
okay.
it's not like we're making stuff up. We're we're honoring the mother of our Lord. It's just
Hmm.
like it's like this is what God wants. God wants us to
Yeah.
honor His mother. So
Hmm.
because Christ is fully God, fully man, and so the mother of Christ is the mother of the person, not of an individual nature. God has two natures, human and divine, but the
Okay. Yep.
mother the mother of Christ is the mother of the whole person, and there's one person with two natures. So Mary,
Mm,
that's why Mary is the mother of God. Not to say that she's co-eternal with him or anything stupid like that. No.
right.
But, God in his infinite humility lowered himself. He didn't have to do it, but he took on our flesh and he was born of a virgin. Like it's just like
Right.
amazing. It's
Yeah.
amazing. Of course, he prepared his mother with special prevenient grace. She's the only one ever
Mm,
to get the grace to prepare so that she would be free of sin, original sin, actual sin, even the smallest sin,
huh.
because he's the Lord of the universe. He's not going to be
Yeah.
contaminated. He can't be born from a slave of Satan. And that's what we are
Right.
when we're born. We're born in slavery to Satan. We're born in slavery to Satan. That's what we believe. And
Yeah.
only Mary was preserved from that, not by her merits, but with a view to the merits of Christ. So I want to make that very clear
Interesting. No,
when it
that's good.
comes when it comes to Mary worship. I mean, we do worship Mary, but worship is three kinds. There's the adoration due to God alone. That's the true worship, what you would use the word worship.
Hmm.
But there are other forms of worship, cult, like
Okay.
the veneration of the saints, and especially the veneration of the Mother of God. So the word worship is a weaker word in Catholic technical theology than it is
Okay.
in Protestant circles.
Yeah.
You use it to mean adoration or
Hmm.
latria. We don't use it that way. We use it in a looser way.
Okay.
And so we do worship Mary, but we also worship all the saints, and
Yeah.
we can even worship in a really broad sense. We can worship, an ice cream, because
Mm.
we see the worth. It's good. Like as
Okay.
you said,
Yeah.
when God created, He created a good world. So
Yeah.
when you see the worth, that's worthship,
Okay.
worthship.
Yeah.
So it's like I said, with the word jealousy, we have very technical definitions of a lot of words that are
Yeah.
used in general society, colloquial, and have different emphases.
Right.
So yeah, but the meditations on the life of Christ and his mother are very powerful. Traditionally, there were 15, then five more were added. Now they're 20, and it's
Okay.
it's all biblical. It's all scriptural, and
Gotcha.
we're looking at everything from the Annunciation all the way through Christ's life, and even the Assumption of Mary into heaven, which is a Catholic dogma, and then her coronation in heaven as the Queen of heaven, the Queen of the universe, everything in between. So there is definitely a strong Marian emphasis to it. But I was born and raised Protestant. I don't know if you know that,
Okay.
but um, I'm very, very happy to have found my way back to Christianity, because I was atheist for 25 years. And
Oh
when I
wow.
came back to Christianity, because I had studied Western philosophy, I'd sort of come to understand that Christianity, the fullness of Christianity, is in the Catholic Church. That's what I came to believe.
Okay.
So I came into the Catholic Church, and I'm very, 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 very happy to have the saints and have Mary and to have, all the Catholic things that are misunderstood generally by non-Catholic
For
Christians.
sure. No, and yeah, and I love like just learning. Like so, like what you've been sharing is cool to, like I said, I try to listen and then just build my own opinions around it and go to those who are more theological sound and have that knowledge and stuff and just ask questions and learn because we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah,
And you can all I want is to have a better relationship with God and
yeah.
live a closer life to him. And so I can learn from anybody and take something and then find what like fits soundly. And
Yeah,
so I
I
think
want to
cool.
I want to say, I want to say about the non-Catholic Christians or Protestants, whatever you want to call them. I do admire your faith, and there's a lot for me to learn from you and from different Protestant guests that I've had. And I want to make it very, very clear that I'm extremely jealous for the sovereignty of God,
Yeah.
especially God the Father. When I came into Christianity as an adult, I was not a Trinitarian. I did not believe in the
Mm.
Trinity or the Incarnation,
Okay.
but I did believe in God the Father. And through education, under the hand of a gentle Catholic monk who I just met by chance, he understood that I didn't believe in the Trinity or the Incarnation, but he knew that I wanted to worship God, so he helped me and he educated. He gave me private instruction, and I came to understand and believe wholeheartedly in the Trinity, the Incarnation, and all the Christian distinctives.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to let you know that I don't want anything to encroach on the sovereignty of God. Not Mary, not St. John the
Yeah.
Baptist, not St. Paul, nobody. So it's not like I'm flakier than you are when it comes to the sovereignty of God. Like, I'm very jealous for that.
Yeah.
But how would you explain to a non-Trinitarian person
Mm.
the Trinity? Like, that's a tricky one to talk about.
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
do you believe? Why do you believe? Why do you believe in the Trinity? I'll just ask you point blank. Why do you believe in it?
Yeah. Because I mean, I always heard it growing up, like Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. The three are one, and that's just what I learned and heard about, and so just believed. And I think for me, I don't know, I just kind of not necessarily. Yeah, so I mean that's just what I've always known, but there's been moments where, you know, I felt the Spirit like tell me to do something that if I didn't do, like, I don't know what would have happened. And like hearing God speak a couple times, at least I thought it was God. I mean, it turned out it was, I mean, it was the right thing. So I don't know. I think just experiences and just, again, learning it growing up and then just having those experiences in life that like that urge to get help. Like, I don't think it was me saying, hey, you should do this. I think it was kind of Spirit kind of guided me there. And like hearing God or Jesus saying, hey, prepare a word, like audibly heard the day before my grandpa's funeral, like, hey, weather was great. You need to prepare something to speak. Wasn't asked to speak. They already had everything set up. Next morning, we woke up to 6 inches of snow. Everyone's late to the funeral, pastor and everything, and no one's there. And my dad and uncle are like, what are we going to do? I was like, I'm prepared. And it was just weird things like that. So I don't know. But yeah, it's just kind of what I've always learned and heard, you know, growing up.
Because I've met Jews, Muslims, Mormons
Mm-hmm.
who have a connection with God as they conceive it, and they feel the touch of God, they hear the voice of
Mm-hmm.
God, they respond to the promptings of the Spirit, and so on and so forth. But they're radically different, interpretations of like who is God, what is God, and and none of the examples I gave were a Trinity. So that's not good enough for me. What it comes down to for me, I'm just letting you know,
Sure.
and this is something maybe you can go away and think about. But for
Mm-hmm.
me, it's I believe in the Trinity for the same reason I believe in the canon of Scripture, which books are in the Bible and which ones aren't. I believe that only on the authority of the church, and Christ and his church are one.
Mm.
It's because the church is an extension of the incarnation. Like when Christ ascended into heaven, he said, "It's better that I go so I can send you the Spirit." And the Spirit guides the church into all truth. And the church is the pillar and foundation of the truth. So for me, it's all about authority. It's all about the church. I'm wondering what you think the church is, because you can't deny that Christ came to earth, suffered and died for us, and he resurrected, and he built a
Right.
church, right? He built a
Right.
church. He built a church.
Yep.
And the church is the pillar and foundation of the church, of the truth. So to me, that's why I believe in the Bible, and that's why I
Yep.
believe in the Trinity. That's why I believe in all of it. So how does that strike you? Is that something uh, that can inform your relationship with Christian truth, or what
Yeah.
do you think?
Yeah. No, I would agree with that. I think, you know, he came down and then as he went back, like the church, and I know there are, you know, watered down and there's always the negatives that come from it. But yeah, I think truthfully coming from the Bible and that being the foundation, yeah, I would agree with that.
It's a really messy church
Yeah. Yeah.
here below. I mean,
Yep.
I can show you infographics of the relationships among all
Yeah.
the different denominations and all the different splintering within, different Protestant communities, and
Mm-hmm.
splintering within Orthodox, splintering within Catholic.
Yep.
It's a mess. It's a
Yeah.
mess, and it's full of errors and lies and manipulation and politics and antichrist and
Yeah.
Satanism, and it's full of selfishness and
Yep.
greed and lust and everything else. And on Judgment Day, we're going to get to see how we've abused the body
Yeah.
of Christ, which is the church.
Yeah.
The spotless bride is still spotless, but
Mm.
not here
Yeah.
below. Not here below, because
Right.
it's in process here. It's it's working out. We're working out our salvation in fear and trembling, and we're sinners, like you said, we're sinners.
Yep. Yep.
So it's really ugly. It's really dirty here.
Yeah.
But in heaven,
Mm.
Jesus ascended to heaven.
Yep.
I got a spoiler alert for you. It's nicer up there. It's nicer up there. Okay.
Right.
There's no
Uh,
BS. There's no
yeah.
politics. There are no
Yep.
snake oil salesmen trying to lure you into a false sect of Christianity, and then, get all the guns and fight off the police and everyone drinks the Kool-Aid. Like, so that's not
Right.
happening in heaven, okay?
Right.
But it's
Yep.
happening here. It sounds
Right.
ridiculous to say. It sounds ridiculous to say, I belong to Christianity. Oh, isn't that sect where people drink Kool-Aid and they buy a bunch of guns? And well, yeah,
Right.
sadly it is. I mean, like, sadly, we've got all kinds of kooks speaking in
Hmm.
Christ's name and claiming to be Catholic or claiming to be Orthodox or claiming to be Protestant, when
Right.
really they're doing the opposite. It's disgusting. The corruption within the church. This is what I'm driving at. It's
Yeah.
real and it's disgusting and it confuses people. And
Yep.
people that are looking to maybe become Christian, they might get turned off. So
Yeah.
how do you
Well,
deal
I
with
I mean,
that?
I've had friends who like, yeah, I don't not about church because of whatever the politics and the judgmental people. I'm like, yeah, but we're all imperfect. Like we're trying to do the best we can, and yes, I know there are issues, and uh, but the truth still can come like out of those situations. I think God's truth can still be heard and seen, even though it's a group of imperfect people trying to share it. And I think, yeah, there's those conversations, why do you feel yourself like feeling that way towards it? Like what has happened? Okay. And then nowhere's perfect. So like you're always gonna have something. The music's too loud, or they talk about tithing or donations too often. Like there's always something. So like truly it comes back to like what's the block in our life, I feel like, keeping us from that truth. Like what's stopping us from actually getting the truth in those
Well,
places.
you mentioned some pretty mild
Right.
annoyances.
Yeah.
You pretty
Yeah.
I could
Yeah.
deal with that. If that was the worst, wow, that
Right.
would be we'd be heaven on earth here, if that was
Right. I
the
know.
worst
Yeah.
problems plaguing the church, that would be amazing. Wow.
Yep.
No, we've got so many bigger problems than that. But
Yeah.
the other interesting thought experiment is to go to the other extreme and say, "Hey, you know what? Why don't we build a perfect heaven on earth? Why don't we build a puritanical church that's perfect and rigid, and you can't belong to it unless you're perfect, and this is how it's going to
Yeah.
be, and we're going to monitor and police everything perfectly?" That, to me, is the absolute worst manifestation of church that you could ever
Mm,
envisage. And some
yeah.
people have tried it. Some people have tried it. Like, let's do it right. It's like,
Yeah.
no, we can't. We can't, right? You're calling God a liar if you claim
Mm,
to be without sin. So we
yep.
have to kind of what are we going to do? We just have to like be humble and live in this mess, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I think of, and I could be off, but like when he talks about like the ones who need the doctor, the sick people need a doctor. And like,
Yeah.
I mean, we're all, I mean, quote unquote sick. We're all sinners. Like, so we need that. And when you get imperfect people together, someone's going to rub you the wrong way. They're going to, you're going to see something and be like, oh, I don't like that. And so like, and then you're going to have people making decisions in places of authority who are sinners, and it's going to cause issues. And so,
Hey, Mr. Priestman, I don't like what you did. You raped my daughter. I don't like that. It's like
right.
that's what we're dealing with. Like we're in a
You're right.
world
Yeah.
we're in a world where like Catholic priests are raping young boys and
You're
girls or
right.
whatever. It's like
Yeah.
it's amazing. It's amazing the patience of God and the
Yeah.
judgment. There's the mercy of God, but there's also the judgment of God.
Mm,
It's very sobering for
yeah.
you and for me to think about what God's allowing to happen and to think about Judgment Day. It's very, very sobering. And
Yeah.
I think that's why, I think that's part of God's genius is that he's not coming down himself and policing it and cleaning it up and making
Yeah.
sure that we're good.
Yeah.
Um, but he is, we know that Judgment Day is coming. So if we're mindful of that, we'll be less likely to do
Yeah.
the nasty stuff that some Christians are doing, right? Some
Right.
Christians.
Right. And that's another thing I always hear. I don't always hear. I've heard a handful of times is, well, if God was all loving and everywhere, then why would he let bad things happen to kids? Or
Yeah,
why would he let that happen? I'm like, I mean, God's real, but the devil's also real, and we have free will.
yeah,
Like, I don't know
yeah,
like what else to say to that, but that's kind of,
yeah. It's very very heavy. It's heavy
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So, what kind of assurance do you have? Because I don't have assurance that I'm going to heaven.
Hmm.
Are you once saved, always saved, or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I believe that, you let Jesus in your heart and you make that decision that and you truly let him in your heart, that you're saved, I think.
Yeah, but
So,
yeah, but those people that, those people that were baptized the same day as you, who
uh-huh.
fell away, you're just going to say, well, they didn't truly let Christ in. It's like, you know, the definition is flexible enough to account for people that went through the same motions you went through, but didn't stick it out. You know what I mean? So it's
Right.
like once saved, always saved if you're saved. And if you weren't saved, you were
Yeah.
never saved. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's
Right.
kind of like your definition is just going to adapt to everyone if they're saved or if they're not. Like they're two destinations, heaven or hell,
Right.
right? And you're saying, well, if you're in, you're in. Yeah, I know that, but I don't know if I'm in or not. I don't know if I'm in or not. Like, I mean, because I'm selfish and I love pleasure in the world, and I
Right.
fall into the temptations of Satan and the world,
Right.
and the flesh. So, uh,
I think if we like and this is what I've learned and kind of taken is you make that choice, and God knows our heart, obviously, at the end of the day, but
yeah,
when you make that choice, like your life should look different. You
yeah,
shouldn't be living in this. And obviously we're sinners. We all fall short. All the disciples fell short. Uh, but like, do you live in it and do you continue to do that, or do you take the steps and work and do what you need to do to grow and stay out of the temptations? Obviously,
uh,
we're going to slip up.
my friend Christopher just gave me a really good lifeline here. He says, by analogy, do you have any assurance about the solidity of your marriage? That's a very excellent and pertinent question. And yes, I do. Yes, I do. But I was insecure for the first, like, I'm married 28 years now. I
Okay.
was
Congrats.
insecure for the first 25. Very
Okay.
insecure. Very
Okay.
insecure. And we did talk about divorce at different times. There were major things. It
Yeah.
wasn't easy. It wasn't guaranteed.
Yeah.
Now, after 28 years, I'm starting to feel okay. Maybe it's it's gonna work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we don't have any children, unfortunately. But it's just difficult. It's just difficult in today's world, or I guess in the
Yeah.
world in general. It's
That's
just
two,
it's
that's two
difficult.
imperfect people trying to keep that bond, as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Where it's like, I
And
mean,
she's anti-Catholic, which is a big
oh,
problem.
wow.
Very anti-Catholic, rabidly.
Huh.
And hateful, very hateful, which is not good. But you know, it's an excellent analogy. It's an excellent question, and
Hmm.
it is pertinent to you know the question of my salvation. I'm not here to cry a pity party like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm going to make it or not. But it's a Catholic dogma that we cannot have certainty about our salvation
Okay.
without a special grace from God. Like God could
Right.
give me that grace. He hasn't given me that grace, right? So I have to work out my salvation in fear and trembling. And I'm pretty sure that if I had to choose heaven or hell, I'm going to choose heaven. You know,
Right.
it's like maybe I'm overly scrupulous and worried about it. Um, but there's that notion of the fear of God, like the fear of God is the fear of displeasing God. And
Mm,
I know my wretchedness. I know how weak I am. Like before going live, I told you that I'm weak physically. Like I'm prone to illness and
gotcha.
whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm also aware of my spiritual weakness. It's
Hmm.
it's a reality. I'm not pretending to be weak. I am weak.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So I'm just doing a little therapy session with you here. So I hope you don't
Uh,
mind.
No, absolutely. No, that's great.
Just letting you know where I'm at.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, I'm in the same place. Like, I know there's so much, and that's why I like having these conversations so I can try to grow, and then I can go back and like get in the word and remind, like, even the questions you asked me, like, I'm like, oh yeah, I need to go back and like dig in there again and just have a stronger, you know, thought on some of these things. So it's reminded me too, as well, in that same regards.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being here for me. My friend
Yeah.
Christopher says. He is echoing what Paul says. Our assurance, I think he's talking about you. He's echoing what Paul says. Our assurance in Christ is in the witness of the Spirit and the evidence in our life. He says of himself, my lack of assurance comes from the lack of these two. So, Christopher, my friend here,
Mhm.
he's going through a little bit of a rough patch with his faith. He's got his family and his kids and whatever. But he's seeking and striving maybe for like the good old days when you're really on fire and this sort of thing. We go
Mm,
through we go through dry patches, all of us.
Hmm.
And I think he's going through something like that. And but the irony is the fact that he's aware of it and he's seeking, and that he's itching for that that in and of itself is an assurance, right?
Yeah.
That in and of itself is a sign. If he didn't care, if he's lukewarm, he just would be enjoying life. But
Right.
he's focused on the questions, and why am I a little bit dry or struggling, and why don't I have, the witness of the Spirit and the evidence in my life, and these sorts of things, like things that I complain about, like why aren't I, um, feeding the poor, clothing the naked, and visiting the sick, and visiting the prisoner and the widow.
Hmm.
Like, I never do that. I don't do that. Like, I give to charity. If there's a guy on the street wants money or whatever, I give him money.
Hmm.
I do little things, and I do my station in life, try to be good to my wife and be a good employee at work, although I really suck. But I'm a loser. I'm a failure, and I'm
Yeah.
not out there doing stuff like a Christian should do. I like that's another reason I'm annoyed with the Mormons, because they're doing a lot of good stuff, and I'm
Yeah.
not, and I'm jealous. I want to be good. I want to be good. I want to act like a Christian.
Yeah.
So how do you feel in that regard?
Yeah, I think the big thing for me is kind of just reminding, like, to be connected to the vine, like make sure I'm staying connected to the vine so I'm ready for when it's time to bear some fruit.
Opportunity for the
When it
opportunity.
arises, we have fruit trees here, and I kind of think about that when you're talking a little bit was, we didn't get fruit from 3 trees this year, and sometimes
Did you wither
sometimes
them?
that
Did you wither them?
right, yeah, I should have. I was hoping to get fruit, but yeah, I think that kind of, I don't know, a correlation somehow maybe, because there's so many factors to if the fruit comes. I mean, you have to have the bees come to pollinate. You have to have the right weather. You have to have enough cold time for the peaches to produce. So like, there's so many external factors. The tree and the branches are there, and everything's ready and waiting for those opportunities to bear that fruit. And I think, and again, I'm not a theologian. I could be far off, but from my perspective, like if I'm attached to the vine, if I'm connected to Christ, to God through the Word, through prayer, and am open to those opportunities when everything's right, He'll use me to bear fruit. And that's kind of where my mind went with all that is, yeah, maybe I'm not Mother Teresa, maybe I'm not, feeding thousands or, doing more that I would love to do. But maybe it's, maybe the things aren't right. Maybe I'm not ready for those bigger moments, but I can be connected to the vine and ready for those opportunities that might be just smaller ones along the way that could plant a seed in somebody's life that they then are the ones that produce a lot more fruit. But you're still the catalyst, or God uses you as a catalyst for that person's life. I don't know.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I think humility is at the heart and the core of the Christian walk, and we have to die to self, right? We have to die to self, and it's our pride that keeps us from dying to self. So we need the humility so we can die to self and live unto Christ. And I think that's the very heart of the challenge of the Christian life.
Yeah.
I mean, we could talk about all kinds of fancy external stuff, but in the heart, that's where it starts. And if you don't have
Hmm.
that, if you don't have the humility, if your pride is making you think that you're going to be this, or you're going to do this for God or that for God, even if you do the external things, even if you do a life full of service,
Yeah.
it's a clanging gong, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like the story, like, you know, plant the seeds for the trees that you might never sit under their shade, kind of thing. Like, we might not actually know what we're doing right now is a bigger thing. Like giving money to that homeless person, or just smiling at someone who's maybe contemplating taking their life, and that was what they needed to say, okay, someone just smiled at me and actually truly cared. And then they go on and they become, this huge change in the world. Like, we don't know, like our fruit could be that. Our fruit might not be, saving the world, quote unquote, but like those seeds we plant could again grow into and affect the people. That's why everyone has a story. And like, if you can share your story and someone can hear your story, and that could be the change they needed, that then they go out and become the next Mother Teresa or whatever it
Yeah.
is. But we might not be that person, but we had that seed planted by just sharing and talking about our faith and talking about our journey. That is a catalyst for change we might never know or see. But without doing that, we hinder that possibility.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. You remember, I don't know if you remember that Hillary Clinton met Mother Teresa, and she asked Mother Teresa, where's the woman president of the United States? Where is she? Why haven't we had first woman president of the United States? What's going on, Mother Teresa? And she said, well, you probably aborted her.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Yeah.
It's like, you talk about the butterfly effect, a little influence here, and how does that grow and manifest? It's not only good stuff that manifests.
Yep.
It's also bad things like killing an innocent child that manifests
like Moses.
too.
You think about Moses; they had a choice, and like the choice changed the whole trajectory.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
And there you see a lot of those in the Bible, like different decisions that could have, changed the outcome of a lot of things. And that's one that sticks out to me. But yeah, I think good or bad, we affect the future somehow.
Scary.
Yeah, it's scary because I know.
Careful.
Yeah, don't do anything. But yeah, so that again goes back to like why I make sure I tell my kids, even at this age, 2 years old and 5 months old, like tell them multiple times that like I love you. Like even if he's acting up, crying, like throwing a tantrum, like dude, I love you. Like I love you, and like because I want to ripple out good because I'm not perfect. There's still gonna be moments, but I want them to know that at least. So
amazing. Well, I'm sure you're doing a very good job. I keep looking up at your photos with the dad DAD up in the corner there. How many children am I looking at there?
Oh, just 2. We just have 2. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think it's the first D is Everett holding the letter D. The middle one has the A with both boys, and then the second D is just Riley holding it.
So Everett and
Riley.
Everett and Riley. They don't sound like Christian names particularly.
Nope. Really just we're just trying to pick some names with some decent meanings. Everett's strong as a wild boar. So just strong, and he's super smart. And Riley, I forget what Riley's meant now.
Let's Google it.
Yep. Got to
remind
myself. Riley.
Courageous and valiant.
Courageous and valiant.
Woods clearing the woods.
Yeah. So courageous and valiant, and kind of that. My mind went to the frontiersmen. They were they didn't know what they're gonna do. They're just clearing the stuff and had that courage. So yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
So yeah.
And your name is pretty cool too, Christopher.
Yeah. Yep. Christ bearer or bearer of Christ. And
what's your middle name?
Thomas.
Oh. Ooh.
Yeah.
Which Thomas do you picture for yourself?
Well, so my dad picked my name. He did Christopher from Christopher Columbus. So explorer, kind of going out. And Thomas from Thomas Edison actually is why he picked it.
Okay.
And so, and my wife wanted to name Everett Thomas, like his first name be Thomas, and I was like, I don't like Thomas because I think doubting Thomas, and I don't like that as much. But his middle name is Thomas as well. But
do you think Thomas actually put his hand in the wounds, or he didn't have to at that point?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I would. I don't know.
You never thought about it? You didn't have an image in your mind when you read the story about?
Not really. I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question.
You weren't sure if he actually did put his hands in the wounds or not?
Right. Yeah.
You never assumed that he did or that he didn't. You just left it open question?
I guess I assumed he probably did.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, I'd have to go back and really dig into it again now.
Yeah, because it's not mentioned. That's why. Because people come away from that with one or the other, like just by default, and they don't even think about it. They just assume. And they might even think that it was written in the story that he did put his fingers in the wounds.
Yeah.
but we're filling in the gaps.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I could see him being like just like gingerly, like, is it like? Okay, I don't know. Yeah,
Go back and read it. Go back and read it
yeah.
and see if
See what stands out.
how would it change your vision of the scene
Yeah,
if instead of assuming that he did, that assuming that he didn't need to and he just didn't, you know.
yeah,
Because I sort of came to that when I came back to the church in 2009. I sort of revisited that story and I flip-flopped. I went to like, no, he didn't put his hand in the wounds. So it doesn't really matter. I don't think it really
yeah.
matters. But like the truth matters, and we're going to find out on Judgment Day,
Mm-hmm.
and that's gonna be very exciting to on Judgment Day to because you know you're familiar we're familiar with the Bible, you know,
Mm-hmm.
more or less. Even if you read
Right.
it all day every day, you're just more or less familiar with it.
Uh-huh.
But in reality, on Judgment Day, there are going to be a whole lot of details and perspective and answers to questions, and it's just going to be so rich.
Yeah,
All of
yeah.
it.
I always wonder. I'm like, man, if not that I would at this point would even care, but like, could I just like sit down and get a box of popcorn and just watch all of history and
Yeah,
just like see what was
yeah,
actually true and like I
yeah,
love history anyways and
yeah,
like just to see it all like in
yeah.
like could you think of I mean even Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, like Moses, all these people like you see them but we only know them as pictures or you know what movies portray them as like to actually see everything like the legit like person like Moses splitting the sea like what that truly looked like it would just be that'd be awesome.
Amazing,
It would be
amazing.
amazing. Like,
Sign me up for
yeah,
heaven. I want to be
like
on
the
the good.
angels, Jesus's birth, like the angels coming out of the sky, like what that looked like to you know the shepherds and things like, and when they
Amazing,
spoke to them, like ah, yeah,
amazing.
the whole history, everything would be
You know, a part of the biggest pain, the biggest pains of hell is that pain of remorse and regret, and
mm,
that's you know that you don't get to see God, you don't even get to see reality as it is.
yeah,
Like I mean, maybe the damned, maybe they do get to see history, but they're not going to be able to enjoy it because
mm,
they've deprived themselves of God. You know, so it's going to be like you know I don't know if you've ever seen you're into video production, so you
uh,
could have the same cute scene with a baby on the beach and there's a cute crocodile or whatever. You could put cute music to it; it'll give one impression. But
yeah,
you could put horrifying music to it, and it's going to give a completely different
yeah.
impression.
You change up the lighting, change up the angle of the camera, and
Exactly. So
all different. Yeah,
that's what Judgment Day is going to be. It's the same stuff,
hmm,
but for the enemies of Christ, it's a horror, and for us, we're going to be like, wow, it's amazing.
yeah,
So it really is mind-boggling. That
yeah,
orientation that we choose is going to
mm-hmm,
really affect you know what we experience. And I don't want to you know I don't want to say that my primary motivation to go to heaven is to enjoy myself and eat popcorn and watch a good happy movie, but you know it is it's part of the motivation. It is honestly, and
right,
the church my church tells me that it's not perfect, but the fear of hell is good. It's not perfect. It's not a
mm,
perfect motivation, but it's a good motivation. It's a good starting
yeah,
spot
yeah,
to want the good things of God and to not want hell. It's not perfect. We should want God for God's sake, and we should, you know, be good for goodness sake, not
yeah,
because of the goodies. I'm gonna get to do
right,
this in heaven. I'm gonna get to do that in heaven, and whatever. But the church is very clear that we shouldn't despise our desire for the good things.
right,
Just as here below, we shouldn't despise food and
mm-hmm,
sex and whatever, but we should just be careful to put them in their proper place. And
for sure,
we should recognize that the creator is above the creature. We should never invert that.
right,
That's what sin is. It's choosing the lower good over the higher good. It's putting the creature above the creator. So it's the same thing when I look to the afterlife. I know that I'm a weak, selfish person, so a lot of my motivation to get to heaven is just to enjoy myself, you know.
yeah.
But the church doesn't beat me up too much about it. It just says, "Well, learn to love, and you'll have a more perfect motivation." So, what do you think about
Absolutely.
all that?
Yeah. And it's like, because I've heard a lot of things, you know, people describing like what heaven could be like that we'll have a job, we'll just be worshiping the whole time. Like, like it'll be perfect, and like what perfect is different for everybody. Like I love animals, I love forest, I love, you know, being out in nature and things like that. And so like perfect for me would be like just like that, like, and just talking to God like while I'm out there, like garden Eden kind of like thing.
Yeah.
And for some people, they hate animals, they hate woods, so like that would not be perfect for them. Like
You
so,
can't go to heaven if you hate animals. You can't go to heaven if you hate animals. I'm sorry, you can't.
right? So like I think that'll it's just the vastness and like and just I don't know, and maybe the hate of animals and stuff comes from a fear of something happened prior that'll be gone, and so they'll I don't know. So just you know,
We
I
see
did a
through
funny thing yesterday
yeah,
actually. AI now obviously is crazy and like it can create images and stuff. So I'm just curious, like to see what you know. Hey, can you draw me heaven and what it would look like? And I'm like, it's cool, but I'm sure it's gonna be so much more. Like,
yeah.
because there's just a gate with like a lot of pretty colors, and like that's another thing. I believe doesn't it say like there's colors that we can't even fathom or something up there, or
Probably,
like things, yeah. So
probably. We can't imagine it. St. Paul said that there are no words, you know.
yeah,
So we just know it's going to be good, and
hmm
um, you know, it's quite a life, it's quite a journey, and it's not easy. You know, it's not easy as we've been mentioning, but it's worth it. Like all
yeah,
the suffering and all the, you know, in the Catholic Church we emphasize suffering a lot, and of course,
hmm
all Christians are aware of the meritorious sufferings of Christ and
yep,
how that saves us, and um, it's just you know, some people here in Canada, there's actually a government service where you can pay to get medically assisted suicide, and I think it's demonic.
um,
Obviously, I think it's demonic.
yeah,
But a lot of people, like the Stoics and other people throughout history that didn't fear God, they would, you know, they would opt for suicide. And you know, you mentioned your own struggle with that, and I've got two aunts who've killed themselves, and my
mm,
mother's tried and failed, luckily. But I've never been tempted to kill myself. But intellectually, like, I mean, if if it were just a one-way ticket to heaven, I would just do it immediately. You
right,
know, my church tells me that it's a one-way ticket, but to the other place. You know
yep,
what I mean?
yep,
So I'm not tempted to do it anyway. But I mean, if you told me, like, I mean, if some cult leader convinced me, God forbid, that yeah, we just need to kill ourselves and go straight to heaven, it's like that's amazing. Let's do it. You know.
right,
But that's a lie, right? That's a
right,
lie. That's not what it's all about.
right,
So many people kill themselves, so it's really tragic. And the church, of
yeah,
course, says that it's one of the worst sins, and you're going to go to hell, or whatever. But we have to leave it in God's hands, and in every case, you know, we're bound to obey the church and to not kill ourselves. But God is not bound by by you know, by what happens here below. We are bound,
right,
but God's not bound. God can save the suicide, right?
yeah,
But
yeah.
that's not to give you permission to do it.
No,
It's
yeah,
not to give you permission to do it. We're just saying, you know, you can't do it. You're bound to not kill yourself. But God's not bound, and he can save you. But don't do it because you're bound to not do it. You're not allowed to do it. So it's kind of tricky thinking about that God's perspective, our perspective, and
hmm yeah, yeah. It's a sad epidemic, really, that it's happening so more frequently, and um, yeah. So
and abortion's another bad one.
yeah,
What do you
yeah,
think about you mentioned Genesis. We're going to wrap things up here. Thank you for your time.
okay,
But
yeah.
I'm a young Earth creationist. I believe the whole universe is like 7,000 years old or something like that.
Mhm.
Did you grow up with that, or do you believe that today or not, or do you believe in evolution? Do we evolve from apes and there
No,
was
yeah, I believe, yeah, I believe that God created everything, even the things we don't know, even the different versions that people think are evolution type things, and yeah, and I think it's crazy after having kids too, like that how could people believe in like a big bang or evolution like after seeing that process of childbirth? It is a miracle, like
yeah.
to have every little piece just come together like that in a perfect thing, even if it's like even if they come out with something like uh anything, but like that it happens from the two, like the egg and the sperm, like it just both times like blows my mind. I'm like, I could never think evolution like from seeing this, like, and walking through this process because of how perfect everything has to be for that to happen, let alone for us to live here. Like the percent of oxygen versus everything else, like
It's amazing.
it's just, yeah, it's too perfect. Like it's just unbelievable.
Imagine, and this world's out of joint. The creation's groaning under sin, and there are the thistles and thorns and disease and death and natural
Yep.
disasters and all these sorts of things. And yet it's still beautiful. The sunrise and the sunset and
Yeah.
the mountains and the ocean and the birds and the breeze and God's
Yep.
sending us rain on our crops and all these sorts of things. Imagine, like, it's so beautiful. Some atheists think that they can create heaven on earth, and like they see the potential for heaven on earth because they see the goodness of creation. But just imagine how much better the original paradise was.
Oh,
And if you
yeah.
think that was good, I mean, the new heaven and the new earth are going to be even better.
Yep.
Mind blowing.
Absolutely.
So we worship a mighty and awesome God.
Yep. Amen to that.
Thank you for taking the time. I took a little bit more of your time than I wanted to, but it was just fun. A lot of fun talking with you. You're very down to earth and humble. I appreciate that. And I hope you're going to pray for me and mine, please.
Yeah.
Every day. You don't have to name me by name, but just put me on a list somewhere and think about me from time to time. But thanks to my friends in the live chat, and I'm going to enroll you in a perpetual mass, so you're going to get the graces of the mass, the prayers of the mass, you and your family, okay? Every day till the end of time.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Thank you so much. So please invite your lovely wife to come on. I know she's probably going to say no, but just invite her anyway. And in the meantime, we'll see each other on Podmatch and maybe email exchanges or whatever, because we'll try to schedule to bring you back in 2024 to chat some more if you're open to that.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
All right, my brother. What's the final thought you want to leave my listeners with?
Yeah, you just have to go back. I've said it a couple times, but just know your story matters. Know that you're more than the labels the world puts on you, and get out there and just continue to share and plant seeds. You might never see the shade from the trees, but just know you're doing the right thing. So,
excellent. Thank you so much. Thanks for taking the time, and we'll talk soon. Okay.
Thank you.
God bless you, my brother.
You too.
Love you. We'll talk soon.